What if the person you love is slowly being pulled away, not by choice, but by fate and family? In this emotional story, Madam Kim plots a cruel dinner to humiliate her son's girlfriend, DM, and instead creates the perfect opportunity to introduce Toan to Mai Huong, an elegant, powerful woman chosen to be his ideal match. As sparks quietly begin to fly at the dinner table, DM, unaware, spends the night alone, heartbroken and afraid of losing the man she loves. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more dramatic love stories like this. Now, let's dive in. Madam Kim had always been a woman of poise and prestige, but behind her composed smile was a mind as sharp as a blade. As the matriarch of one of the most influential business families in the city, she had no intention of letting her only son, CEO Toan, fall into the arms of a woman like Ly Tu Diem, a girl she considered too ordinary, too simple, too unworthy. Though Diem had a kind heart and was loved by many, especially Toan, she lacked what Madam Kim valued most, a powerful background, a family name that could elevate the family's legacy, and the ability to move in the upper circles with elegance and ambition. For months, Madam Kim had tolerated Diem's presence with forced civility, masking her disdain beneath polite nods and half-hearted compliments. But now, she was done playing nice. She had devised a plan, a subtle, well-orchestrated social trap that would expose Diem's inadequacies and drive a wedge between her and Toan. The stage? A formal family dinner. The guests? Her own family, the Trin family, longtime business partners, and their daughter, Mai Huong, a woman Madam Kim had admired for years. Mai Huong was everything Diem was not, the heiress of a powerful conglomerate, fluent in multiple languages, charming, graceful, and widely respected in high society. Most importantly, she was single and, as Madam Kim believed, the perfect match for her son. She had sent out the invitations personally. "It'll be an intimate dinner," she had told Diem sweetly over the phone, "just a casual evening with close friends." But in truth, everything from the guest list to the seating arrangement had been meticulously calculated. Diem would be the odd one out, the girl with no pedigree, placed beside a family who embodied everything Madam Kim desired for her son. Madam Kim envisioned the dinner clearly, Diem struggling to keep up with conversations about business mergers and foreign investments, fumbling with etiquette, blushing under the passive-aggressive questions designed to highlight her humble background. And while Diem squirmed in discomfort, Mai Huong would shine poised, articulate, and utterly captivating. By the end of the night, Madam Kim was certain that even Toan would begin to see the difference. She could already picture how it would unfold, Diem leaving the dinner hurt and humiliated, questioning her place in Toan's life. And in that vulnerable gap, Mai Huong would step in not forcefully, but gracefully, like a breeze through an open window. Toan, caught between filial duty and romantic confusion, would begin to drift. It was all too perfect. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The morning of the dinner, Diem called to apologize. She had been asked last minute to attend a charity event that she'd committed to months ago, a cause close to her heart involving underprivileged children in the countryside. Her voice was full of regret, but also firm. She couldn't cancel. It was important. Madam Kim's eyes narrowed slightly as she listened. Her tone remained warm, but a glint of triumph flashed in her eyes. Diem's absence would no longer be a liability, it was now an opportunity. "Of course, darling," she said gently. "We'll miss you tonight." She hung up the phone, turned toward the dining room being set by staff in polished silver and crisp linens, and smiled to herself. The dinner would proceed without Diem. But it would no longer be just a family gathering. It would be a debut. A carefully staged introduction of her son, Toan, to the woman she believed he was truly meant to be with. The evening air was thick with the scent of jasmine and expectation as the guests began to arrive. The Kim residence, a grand villa perched elegantly on the hillside, shimmered under golden lights, its wide verandas echoing with soft laughter and the clink of crystal. Everything was perfect, just as Madam Kim had intended. Toan arrived from the office a little late, his tie loosened, his expression unreadable. He hadn't been thrilled about the dinner, and learning that Diem wouldn't be there had only added to his quiet frustration. He hadn't spoken much to Mai Huong in years, and he wasn't in the mood for a matchmaking session disguised as a family gathering. But as always, he kept his thoughts to himself out of respect for his mother. Inside the lavish dining room, Mai Huong was already seated, dressed in a simple yet stunning ivory silk dress that complemented her graceful features. She stood to greet him, her smile warm and composed. "Toan," she said, offering her hand. "It's been too long." He shook her hand politely, surprised by her natural ease. She wasn't trying too hard like he had expected. There was something genuine about her confidence, calm, unforced. As dinner began, conversation flowed effortlessly between the two families. Madam Kim led with charm and grace, steering topics toward business, philanthropy, and family legacy, subjects that kept Toan slightly disengaged, but Mai Huong fully in her element. She spoke eloquently about her recent work with her father's investment firm, her initiatives for women in leadership, and her travels to Europe for industry conferences. Toan listened, occasionally offering a comment or a smile, but mostly observing. There was no denying that Mai Huong was impressive. More than that, she was likable. Her intelligence wasn't flaunted, her achievements not paraded. She made everyone feel comfortable, even him. At one point, she turned to him, lowering her voice just enough to create a pocket of privacy between them. "Your mother speaks very fondly of you," she said with a small laugh. "I almost feel like I know you already." Toan gave a soft smile, one hand resting against the stem of his wine glass. "I hope she didn't exaggerate too much." "She didn't," Mai Huong replied gently. "But it's hard to tell where the CEO ends and the sun begins. There was a flicker in his gaze then, surprise, perhaps, or curiosity. For the first time that evening, Toan found himself wanting to ask her something more personal, to learn about the girl behind the polished exterior. And just like that, Madam Kim's plan had begun to weave its subtle web. The dinner drew on with toasts and laughter, compliments exchanged across the table like promises. The Trin family was clearly delighted by the growing rapport between Toan and their daughter. And Madam Kim, though outwardly composed, was glowing inside. Everything was unfolding perfectly, even better than she had imagined. Yet somewhere in the back of Toan's mind, a shadow lingered. As he raised his glass in a final toast, his eyes briefly drifted toward the empty seat at the far end of the table, the one that was meant for DM. A subtle ache tugged at his chest. He wondered what she was doing at that very moment. Had she eaten? Was she alone? Was she thinking of him? He quickly brushed the thought aside as everyone stood for dessert. But no amount of fine wine or charming conversation could fully erase the sense that someone was missing. The dinner had been a success. But at what cost? While laughter rang through the grand halls of the Kim residence, across the city, Ly Tu Diem sat quietly in her modest apartment, surrounded by darkness and silence. The small lamp by her desk cast a soft glow on the stack of photos she'd taken that morning with the children at the charity event. Their smiles, pure and carefree, should have brought her peace. And yet, all she felt was an ache gnawing at her chest. She had tried to stay distracted. She had poured herself into her work, stayed longer than necessary at the event, helped clean up even after the other volunteers had gone home. But no matter how much she tried to run from it, one thought kept returning. Tonight, Toan was having dinner with another woman. And not just any woman. Mai Huong. DM wasn't naive. She knew who Mai Huong was. Everyone in their circle did. The golden girl of the Trin family. Accomplished, admired, elegant. The type of woman someone like Madam Kim would welcome with open arms. The kind of woman people believed was destined to stand beside a man like Toan. DM had never felt like she belonged in that world, and tonight, her absence felt like a loud, deliberate silence. She hadn't meant to miss the dinner. But when the charity organization reminded her of the overlapping schedule, she'd made the difficult choice. She had hoped Toan would understand. Maybe he did. But deep down, another part of her wondered, did her absence make things easier for his mother? Did it make space for something or someone else? She reached for her phone more times than she could count, her fingers hovering over his name, her heart aching to know, was he thinking about her, even once? But the screen stayed dark. No message. No missed call. Just silence. She poured herself a cup of tea, though it went cold before she took a sip. Outside the window, The city sparkled, unaware of the quiet heartbreak unfolding behind her glass pane. Diem wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the chill settle in, not from the air, but from something deeper. Something more painful. She had always believed love could overcome anything. That even if she didn't have the name, the status, or the pedigree, her sincerity and devotion would be enough. But tonight, that belief wavered. Was she foolish to think she could hold on to someone like Toan? Someone born into a world of power, legacy, and expectations? Her mind drifted back to their late-night walks, the stolen kisses in quiet corners, the way his eyes softened whenever he looked at her. That Toan, the man who once held her hand like he was holding something precious, he had never cared about status or social standing. But what if things were changing? What if she was slowly being pushed out, not by him, but by the life he was meant to lead? She closed her eyes, trying to block out the image she feared most. Toan sitting beside Mai Huong, laughing, smiling, sharing stories while their families looked on with pride. A picture-perfect match. A future already written. The tea remained untouched. The night wore on. And Diem, in her quiet corner of the world, felt something fragile inside her begin to crack, not quite a heartbreak, not yet, but the whisper of it, hovering at the edge. She still loved him. But love, as she was learning, didn't always win.